Thank you very much for that introduction. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come more or less to the end of the program, and I can see the hustle bustle going on, and having given the awards to very deserving persons, companies, the representatives, and having heard so many people who are experts in their own area on a very wide number of issues that relate to clean energy, right from listening to people who are talking of innovations in terms of improving solar energy efficiencies, listening to the production of green hydrogen, coal gasification, wind energy, various other things. I think what was really captured and very well put across was the last key speaker, Mr. Agarwal, who said that this transition which is going to take place is not a one-shot affair. It's just not a one-shot affair. It is a transition which is extremely difficult and at the same time unavoidable, and at the same time extremely important from the point of view of energy security and development. Now, when you talk of sustainable energy goals or sustainable development goals, when we talk of, then developed countries fall into a different category, developing countries fall into a different category. We come in the developing nations category. We need more energy for more development, there is no doubt. But how do we get that energy, and where do we ensure that energy? The standards of living being comparable, then we need more energy. Where do you get that energy from? Whole lot of options have been given, and very rightly put that today we are at a situation where more than 80% of energy is somehow coming from fossil fuels. How do we reduce this? How do we transit by getting into other? Now, I think we learned a lesson in the early years when we had the COP20 and COP21, 22, and so. A sudden enthusiasm and saying that perhaps some announcement, some people even talking, saying, okay, 2025 there will be no thermal power stations in the country. This kind of, going to extremes was probably unthought. Well, it's not a thoughtful process. So, if we have to transit, one has to understand where we stand. With solar, there are limitations. We all fully understand. We understand that intermittent power supply, when you're looking at electricity, intermittent power supplies are not entire solutions. Where do you get the base load? We are getting it today from coal. We have been talking about nuclear. I didn't hear much of it. But what we are moving towards, say, for example, they gave the example of saying that we should have modular nuclear plants that are easy to multiply and to add. But we are still stuck with designs on the modular plant. Well, we are not very close to it. We are still stuck with those. So when we talk of modular plants in the nuclear area, well, that is part solution. How do you expand? What is going to be the cost? What is going to be the real module? The model of that module, and so are still issues yet to be resolved. When we talk of hydrogen, I think it's very promising. It's extremely promising. But do we ever think in terms of what are the real difficulties in getting into that area? In brief, somebody says, well, the costs. I had seen a report which has been brought out, and with the help of Niti Aayog, I think it was there, that talked of trying to match the cost of grey or blue hydrogen with that of green hydrogen. And they said that by something like 2030 or 2035, we may be able to match the costs. But what were the conditions of matching that cost? The conditions of matching that cost was that you will use about 230 to 240 gigawatts of installed energy for generating green hydrogen, the amount of hydrogen that will need to be generated. Now we are talking of 500 gigawatts of total solar installations. If more than half is going to go into generation of hydrogen, and we already reached 180, 190 gigawatts, then what is going to be contributed into the grid? Well, these are questions that come to mind, and it's not easy to answer. Again, there are lots of disputes. How much energy is required to produce one kg of hydrogen? What is the price of electrolyzer and how much is it going to reduce? Whether these electrolyzers will be manufactured, whether the technology will easily come here of low-cost electrolyzers or not, is still there are a huge number of questions. Yes, hydrogen looks very, very promising. In most countries, the introduction of hydrogen use has been in transportation, a great idea. But then we have to see how all this comes into a mix. And I'm afraid that we don't have a very clear picture for us. Now, what really are we leading to when we say we don't have a real picture? We talked of CCUS, the carbon capture utilization part, sequestration and utilization. Point is that have we really put in enough research or R&D money, whether it's the private sector, public sector, whether it's the government money, into finding solutions there? I'm not very sure. When we say that we need to have the viability gaps, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's whether you're talking of hydrogen or whatever, whether the viability gaps government is going to come in and put in. First, only example where one can see is that of gasification, 8,500 crores being put. But there again, there are many, many questions in gasification. What technology are we going to use? Are we really having the suitable technology for a low-grade, high, you could say, ash content coal? Are we really having those technologies? Well, there is a model plant in BHEL which has been there. Whether we can really expand, we are saying we'll use that technology in the new plant which is being brought up by CIL. Thermex has been working on it and many other companies. We are not very sure. One goes back and try to understand, and one would say, okay, if you really want to use coal, first and foremost thing, when we talk of people who have gasification plants, say for example, Jindal has it. Jindal is using syngas or gas coming out of after gasification in a DRI plant to make steel. That's one of the applications which is being promoted. But have they really, they use the local coal, but what are they really doing? They are beneficiating it, coming to a standard to use it. Are we really prepared for that? Are we going to use the high ash coal directly? Many attempts are being made, but the fact is that coal which is being used for gasification in other parts of the world, China, for example, is using very good quality coal. China's chemical industry is largely based on coal. It's coming out of coal gasification. So we are not, as I said, we have to really see whether we can make investments in those areas where we hope to find solutions to various problems that all these areas are really facing. Well, point here is that is the government really prioritizing the right areas? Because we heard number of people saying government should give money in this, government should give money in that. But is it appearing so clear that these are the priorities or not? My point is, it's a very gray area. One can say yes, one can say no. But the fact is that groups like this, conferences like this, need to project to the government that this is the need of the hour and we need to invest. I think I'll not go any further deep into it by just saying a few things like sooner or later we did realize that we are not going to get away from coal, at least for a couple of decades. We are adding new capacities even today. And the idea is that when we add new capacities or we do anything with coal, we must be very clear that all that you're going to do is not going to effectively increase any emissions which are unwarranted. That is, you have to go in for unabated coal usage. So, I don't know how it's going to be done. One answer is HELI, that is use high efficiency, low emission technology in a big way. So these are some of the thoughts that are there, and I would like to conclude and thank the organizers for having called me for this function. It was wonderful listening to all the people who are talking of various issues, and all these conferences, and we talk of clean energy, always are exciting, and new ideas do come up. Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our guest of honor, Mr. Alok Perti, former Secretary to the Government of India.